Morning, good morning, good morning. So I'm not gonna be able to look at the chat and all that, and I know I'm 30 minutes late and all that, and I know I've been running late and all over the place. Last night's show was late, Dry Bones was late, and then I realized later on that Dry Bones didn't even air on Take on the World TV because I forgot to switch the channel over. So, yeah. So Dry Bones was actually on my channel last night. So anyway, it was all good. All right, it was all good. The meeting last night. Well, I mean, let me go back to the school, right? And so I might repeat a few things that I kind of talked about yesterday afternoon, but this is my third time going into the public high school, and the two times I went in last year was amazing, of course, right? Absolutely amazing and a blessing. But it was also different. It was different because they were a little less receptive than the four senior classes I spoke to yesterday. It was just pretty amazing to see the difference. Now, last year I seen a lot of very feminine, soft young men, just emasculated, skin tight, skinny jeans on. I mean, like they painted them on, like look like tights. And then, so what really stood out to me yesterday was that the boys are masculine. The boys are getting masculine. Yeah. Okay, that's obviously the GPS. Anyway, so the boys were much more masculine than they were last year. And again, this is the last year these guys were, I guess, last year I guess these guys would have been juniors, and now they're seniors this year, right? Okay, so if I don't have that right, if I don't have that right, then I got it backwards, but it don't matter. So they're seniors this year. So last year they weren't seniors, all right? And so last year they were, around the seniors who were very feminine, very emasculated. The skin tight jeans, the tights, all that, leotards, whatever. And this year they were just, these boys are more masculine. They were more apt to speak up and to accept the truth, right? And they were like sitting in the back, like giving me thumbs up and smiling and agreeing with me. And last year was just different. This year was just so much more. And also this year, so we went live 4 times yesterday. Every class we went live, but none of it showed up online. And so at first I was really ticked off about that, but now I'm like glad. I'm glad that it didn't go online because it wasn't for everyone. It was for every child, every youth, every student that got to sit there and listen. And that's all it was for. And it wasn't for all of us, all of you. Okay? It wasn't for everyone to be able to tune in and listen to. The questions they asked were amazing, and so maybe their questions were to remain right there in the classroom because they just needed to be addressed by the Holy Ghost, and the Holy Ghost addressed their questions yesterday because, and I know it was all of Him and none of me, because I actually did not do anything yesterday like I've done in the two previous times I went in. I was making a plea with these young men and women yesterday, to not give up on, to not address, and to not shun those people that are different than them, or those people that are entrapped by transgenderism or whatever, if they don't understand it, because I was trying to get the point across to relate to them that everybody that's stuck with some kind of vice or some kind of addiction, some kind of stronghold, that all of these people have suffered some type of trauma, right? And so whether it was physical, mental, emotional, sexual, you know, because and I kept trying to explain to them yesterday that I said, look, I says, I don't have to molest your body because I can rape your mind, especially if I have 12 years, K through 12, to do it, right? And they they were getting it, and it was, again, it's all the Holy Spirit, because it was not David up there. David didn't do it like that last year. I mean, I was led by the Holy Ghost, but yesterday was just so much different, and because it was so much different, I am grateful that it didn't work out for us to record it live at all, because it was not meant for everyone. It was meant for those students in those classes, and like what happened in the second class wasn't for the fourth class. And so it didn't need to be seen or addressed by anybody, but it needed to be what it was in that classroom. And the experience for every student was different. The experience was different for me in all four classes. There were some things that I didn't address in some classes, and some things I felt led to address. There were amazing questions, really good questions from the students about um, the um, mental health of people that are trapped in that movement. Um, and then, it was a real blessing to have a young lady come up to me yesterday after class, and she said, "You know what? You're spot on. You are so right." And she said she's a victim of sexual assault. She's a victim of molestation, and she knows she got to this crossroad that she could have chosen to be with women, to be promiscuous, or multiple choices when you get to that crossroad when you're affected traumatically, and she chose drugs. So her vice or stronghold that she chose was drugs. It just so happens that in our society, people don't accept drug addicts as a lifestyle. They accept it as, an addiction, and it's bad. Although they call it a disease, and it's not a disease. Addiction is not a disease. Addiction is addiction. It's sin. It's wrong. And if you don't want to do it, you don't do it. It's that simple. Um, some people say, well, it's not that simple. Well, it is, because if you keep trying to believe that these things are diseases, or that you are created a homosexual, then guess what? Then you're always going to have a crutch. You're always going to have something to fall back on, an excuse. When you stumble or when you fall, you're going to have an excuse and say, but it's a disease. I have a disease. So the disease made me go drink. The disease made me go smoke crack. The disease made me go to the local bathhouse and engage in homosexual activity. Because That's just the way I was designed. And that's a lie from the pit of hell. And so I hope we all understand that addiction is not a disease. Addiction is a stronghold, is a sin, right? It's simple. And these kids got so much more yesterday. I was so blessed. I'm so excited. And I can't wait to receive their reviews. And what I was going to do is I was looking all over for the prior two classes. I have their reviews. Each student writes a review of each speaker and all the speakers together. And so I have their reviews from last year, both times I went in. So I got 8 classes of reviews, and I was looking all over for them because I was going to use those reviews to combat and deal with them, to combat their deception, their delusion, right? But I couldn't find them anywhere, and I'm digging through all the boxes that I know that they're in there, right? And I just couldn't find them. And I was talking to Jeff yesterday. I was like, you know what? It was a good thing I couldn't find them. I wasn't meant to find them. I probably had them right in my hand and didn't recognize them because I wasn't meant to, because I wasn't meant to use the students from last year ideas and concepts for the students this year, because Yahweh had another plan. And his spirit, the spirit of the Lord, was in control, was running the show. And it was a blessing. It was a blessing to tell them, hey, look, guys, I'm not trying to, I don't want you to think like I think. I'm not trying to make you believe what I believe. I'm not even trying to convert you to Christianity. I said, what I'm trying to do is to at least make you think, and to give you an alternative in how you deal with those who are trapped in that deception of the LGBT movement. And the other blessing, right, was that the day before me, Monday, they had a drag queen come in who I know of, and the people that I've dealt with in my group know him very well. And his name is Kyle, but he goes by the name Selena West, right? So I saw Selena West on the board still for Monday. And so it was a blessing to point at that name and say, oh, and let me tell you about Kyle. And everyone kind of looked at each other and then looked at me, and I was like, yes, you know him by Selena, but his name is Kyle, and he lives as a man. He lives as Kyle, and he just gets dressed up as a woman for fun. And you could just kind of see, like, they were like, oh, really? Just for fun? And now I let them know, you know what? Kyle was also traumatized as a child. And they were like, oh, wow. And I was like, so here's his vice. And, I was like, I was Kyle at one time. I says, but I went further and deeper into that movement because I lived as a woman 24 hours a day. And they were just kind of like amazed. And so the teacher said that his first 2 classes would be the most talkative and the most responsive. And it was really the opposite. The first 2 very talkative, most responsive classes were silent and just like captured by the witness and the testimony and the truth. And only one student, just one out of 132, one student came to me at the end of class and was like, well, but how do you know that it's not just who they're supposed to be loving, I says, because it's not. I said, because one, I said, the truth, I says, because we're all convicted. And so when we choose and to accept that kind of deception, we don't even want to be that way. How many homosexuals said, do you think I would choose to be this way? I wouldn't choose to be this way. Exactly, but ultimately it is a choice, and it's not a choice as in, do I want um, marshmallow fluff or strawberry jam with my peanut butter, right? It's the kind of choice that it is a learned behavior, and so behaviors we choose to do them or we choose not to do them. And we even got in one of the classes, we got into the extra or special rights that the LGBT movement receives. And they didn't really understand that. And so one of them says, so do you think that people should, um, that people who are LGBT, um, should have the right to, to have a job and to live where they want to live? And I said, absolutely. I said, I believe that everyone who is born in this nation, who is or has become a citizen of this nation, I said, I believe that they should all have the same rights, equal rights for everybody. I said, but I said, what you don't realize is that it's not equal rights, that for the LGBT want extra or special rights. And so one girl, she raised her hand, I could tell she really didn't agree with me. Now, she was very captured by my testimony, my witness. And you can always tell because they definitely lock eyes with you and they kind of even lose control of their jaw, and it just kind of slowly drops and they're lost and they're just stuck for a short time. But she says, hey, what do you mean? Can you elaborate on what extra or special rights? Because I don't really think that they get extra or special rights. I says, well, let me put it like this. If you are born, if you're born black, I was like, you're not, you don't choose to be black, you're born black. I was like, so, I says, because back in the day, people wouldn't hire blacks. I was like, so they came up with affirmative action. I said, I think it's a good thing because now employers were forced to have to hire certain, and not be discriminative upon race, because we cannot control what race we are. Although Elizabeth Warren tried to control it and become an Indian, but just because you say and you want something so badly, we all can see now that it just doesn't happen like that. And she's not an Indian; she cannot be a Native American, right? So so as I'm talking about affirmative action, I was like, kind of what the LGBT want is an extra or special right because of their sexual preference. They should be hired. I said, but I says, so if I see homosexuality as a sin, then I see drug addiction as a sin, and I see murder as a sin. And so should I be forced to hire a certain amount of drug addicts and alcoholics? And should I be forced to house murderers and thieves? Because that's what we do when we try to force somebody to hire somebody because of their sexual preference, okay? And I know we like to think that homosexuality is an orientation, but it's not. We are designed in a heterosexual design, and although a lot of us deny it, I denied it for over 30 years, it was still there. I was just denying it by being guilty of the sin, right? So I accepted the sin. And that's why homosexuality is a sin like any other sin, but it's not normal sin, okay? Because homosexuality is, one, a direct and deliberate attack against God's very intention of creating male and female. But two, homosexuality is not normal sin because when people feel or think or are told that they're homosexual, that's where they draw the line, and they think that there's nothing outside of that line for them. So they don't even consider the fact that they are heterosexual by design. And homosexuality is not normal sin. Three, because murderers, they know it's wrong to murder somebody. You catch a thief red-handed, they're automatically repentive. Um, Liars know that it's wrong to lie because they got to make up another lie to cover up the last lie. The covetous know that it's wrong to covet, and so on and so on. A man that's cheating on his wife, he doesn't march his mistress down through the town square. No, he hides in a seedy hotel miles away because of his own conviction of what is right and what is wrong. But homosexuality is different. It's not normal sin because homosexuals are pridefully marching down the street, trying desperately to shove their sin, their deviant sexual preference down everybody's throat, and they're trying desperately to force this mental. Now we know it's sin, but I'm gonna refer to it as a mental illness. This mental illness, they're trying to force this delusion upon children. And so we also, got into the conversation about, well, what about somebody who wasn't raped or molested? And, and I said there are exceptions. Nowadays, what are we doing? Nowadays, a child's mind can be totally raped just because their parent, or should I say their unparent, takes them to the library and places them on the lap of a bearded man in a ball gown, a drag queen, reading a homosexual or some type of deviant sexual book, children's book at that, if those words should even all be together. So that's how now their minds are being raped. And so it won't be long before their bodies are open game for that movement, like the amazing Desmond, whose unparents, whose I can't stand calling her his mother, but she is his mother, whose mother actually brainwashed, indoctrinated, and forced that darkness upon her own son by taking him and making him watch RuPaul's Drag Race while telling him he could be so amazing if he was like that. He would be so much more loved if he was like that. He could be so much better than he is if he was like them. And so within the next year or two, Desmond wanted to please mommy and daddy so badly, and he wanted to be amazing like all kids want to be. And so he believed the lie, the deception that he had to become a drag queen. And he had to identify as a drag queen. And so he does. And now he gets a lot of media attention, and he gets a lot more attention than his mother and father probably ever gave to him. And he probably gets more attention from them now than he ever did when he was just Desmond, because he wasn't amazing to his parents, because he was just Desmond. That's why they're unparents, and that's why they should be brought up on charges of mental abuse and even physical abuse by allowing their son to dress like a girl and forcing it upon him. And it happened not just Desmond, it's happening all over the world, all across the world, right? It's happening all across the world, all across this planet. And yeah, in Canada, the children's rights are above the parents' rights, and that's what they want to do here. And there's so much more to this darkness than even I get, right? And I'm constantly trying to look at different aspects, and like I said yesterday to these kids, I was like, hey, listen, if somebody is yelling at your family member, your friend, your loved one who's trapped in homosexuality, and they're yelling at them that you're going to burn in hell and you're going to hell and God hates fags, and if they're doing that, I said, you need to step in between your loved one and that ignorant person, and you need to stand up for them, because they need people to stand up for them and let them know that you are loved, and you're not going to be separated from the love of God. It's God's mercy that you desperately need, right? And until you repent, you're not going to receive God's mercy. And so, none of us should be just okay with whatever we're living in. But when you make people understand that because you lived it, the misery, the heartache, the confusion, the brokenness, and you just want them to understand that they need to understand that those people they love, doesn't matter how much they smile, how many times they say they're happy, they're miserable. And I know this because everybody I knew thought that is who I was, what I was, and that I was happy with my choices, that I was set. I was all good. It was all good. It was all set. I was just on my journey and my path, and that's who and what I was. They all believed it. Anybody who knew me would have defended me immediately and said, well, you might think that for you, but I know my friend, I know my brother, I know my friend and my cousin or whatever. And that's who he is. That's what she is, a lot of them would have said. And so because of that deception, right? Because you don't just live a lie, you become the lie. So because of that deception, people have really accepted the fact that is who people are, that they're truly happy like that. And the truth is, they're not happy like that. They're miserable. And they're still broken, and they're still confused. And so I hope that even if I just had one, and I know there was more, the blessing is that I know there was more than one. So even if it was just one, right, who understands that and can come up aside a loved one that is trapped in that darkness and say, hey, I want you to know I'm here for you, and if you ever need to talk, I'm here, and I would love to know more of your childhood and what you've been through, what you've experienced, and maybe what could have brought you down this path that you're on. So If it was just one that I reached or touched, then it's all worth it. Although, like I said, I know it's more than one. I felt it. It was confirmed, and I'm grateful. I'm honored, beyond grateful, beyond honored, to be used in such a way, and to have the opportunity. So, hey guys, I am gonna get out of here. I'm gonna end this video so I can do what I gotta do. Keep me in your prayers. I'm gonna speak tonight. I'll be speaking tonight um, at Calvary Chapel Fellowship in St. Mary's, Ohio. So just keep that lifted up and keep it in your prayers, and keep interceding, and know that I love you guys. I appreciate each of you. Have a blessed day.